Phil, you became an avid canoeist and decidedly not a whitewater rafting guide.
That's correct.
What started you on this journey, and how did you end up at the Stanislaus River?
Well, back in 1972, I volunteered to work at an environmental defense fund, and I found myself involved with the fight to stop the Auburn Dam on the American River, working with Jerry Merrill. And he asked me to look at the flood control aspects of the Auburn Dam and see if we can come up with an alternative that didn't involve building a dam.
So you were a civil engineer by training.
Yeah, I was. I have a PhD in hydraulics engineering, which is kind of a glorified plumbing degree, and I got that at the University of London, and I had been coming to San Francisco. I'd made friends in San Francisco back in the 60s, in the great era of the counterculture. And so, but I never dreamed that I would actually end up living and working in San Francisco. Long story, but I ended up getting a job with Bechtel Corporation here in the city. But they sent me out to Black Mesa to open up a coal strip mine out there. And after a while, I got pretty disenchanted with what I was doing. And when I quit, I thought I better sort of work on the other side, work with environmentalists. So that's how I ended up at Environmental Defense Fund as a volunteer.
So you were helping out on the analysis of Auburn Dam, which is still not built.
Yeah, right. Never will be, hopefully.
And where did you come across the Stanislaus? Was Jerry the one who got you connected to that, or?
For me, the Auburn Dam was my introduction to California water politics, and when I started digging into all the history and the understanding what the rationale for it, I realized that this was a huge story of how the dam building interests were just dominating any sort of sensible water resources or environmental management policies. But it was an intellectual challenge. And then one day Jerry said, "Well, you've got to get out on the river." And he was, by this time, he was really involved in getting...
And Jerry was one of the best whitewater kayakers out there. Yeah.
So he arranged for me to go out on my very first whitewater rafting trip on the Stanislaus. And I hadn't had any experience of this before. I found myself on a hot, summer afternoon, bumping down that road to campsite, with big army surplus rubber rafts. And it was an amazing experience for me because I had been studying hydraulics. In my lab, I had actually an artificial flume in for my research, but it was all simplified, straight flows. When you get into a real river, you realize you're in a completely different world. And I just went back, kept going back, and after a while, I really, even though it's only a 9-mile run, you get to know that river very intimately.
And there's just so much there to know, too.
But then after a while, it was exciting doing the thrills and spills of the rapids. But what I really liked was the kind of quiet evenings when we were floating and heading for a campsite. And
the big limestone canyon, the high walls.
Right.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with the Stanislaus. And at that time, I'd always had an ambition of eventually developing a consulting practice, looking at alternative ways we could be managing rivers or restoring rivers. And I realized from what I was seeing happening to the Stanislaus with the construction of the dam and the way they were proposing to operate it was not just a one-off story. It was happening everywhere, not just in California and the West, but also in other countries as well.
Which we won't get into it, but this led you to help found International Rivers Network and be involved in dam battles all over the world.
Right.
And coming back to the Stanislaus, just to wrap up this part of it, do you recall being there with when Friends of the River was mounting the Prop 17 campaign? And
Absolutely, that was probably my first introduction to a sort of an initiative campaign, helping out on that. I mean, I didn't quite understand. I'd only been in this country for 4 years at that point. I didn't quite understand what it was, but except that we were trying to get people to vote for it.
The common thread in so many of these stories is that people, especially, they get to the Stanislaus and it just captures their hearts. It's just something that's deeply moving to people to be in that canyon and feel that place. And I've been on a lot of rivers, I have to say. I think it remains one of the great canyons that ever was. There are others, but it really was great. And it sounds like that really got you the same way.
And I have one particular Mark story, which is, I remember going on...
This is Mark Dubois, who is a famous character with the Stanislaus.
Going down, we camped close to one of his favorite caves, and it was evening, and it was quiet. We were all setting up for a meal. We couldn't find Mark, so I went looking for him, and I sent us down to the riverbank. He was sitting there, looking at an eddy, and then I noticed there was a swallow circling above his head. It was like a magical moment. I didn't tell him, but that kind of captured to me the feel of what the river was like, and also the community of people who were engaged in trying to protect it.